I caught my wife's lover embezzling money at work, so I made sure he went to jail. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped into my house that afternoon. The air felt different, charged with an awkward tension. Normally, my wife, Lauren, throwaway name, would be at work until 5, and I only came home early because I was feeling under the weather. I wasn't expecting to find anyone home, but as I pushed open our bedroom door, heart pounding, there they were, my wife and another man scrambling apart on our bed, both half-dressed and wide-eyed with shock. Time seemed to slow down. I recognized the guy instantly. It was Ryan, a guy from my department at work, someone I considered a friend. We'd had beers together. We joked around at the office. And now he was in my bed with my wife. Lauren gasped something like, "It's not what it looks like." And Ryan practically fell over himself, grabbing his pants off the floor. I just stood there, frozen, a mix of rage and disbelief roiling inside me. Then the anger kicked in. I lunged at Ryan and he stumbled backward, throwing his hands up. I'm not a violent person, but at that moment I wanted to break his nose, knock out his teeth, anything to make him feel the physical pain that was overtaking my heart. I yelled, "Get the fuck out of my house!" My voice didn't even sound like my own. Lauren was screaming, telling us both to stop. Ryan, the coward, ducked away from me and bolted out of the room, barefoot and clutching his shirt and shoes. I followed him as far as the front door, where he fumbled with the lock before yanking it open. I'm sorry, he babbled, face red and panicked, but I slammed the door behind him with enough force to rattle the frame. When I turned around, Lauren was standing at the end of the hallway, wrapped in a bedsheet, tears streaming down her face. We just stared at each other for a long moment. I was breathing like I'd run a marathon. My chest hurt. Finally, she whispered, "I'm so sorry." But I couldn't deal with her then. The betrayal was too raw. I grabbed my keys and left without a word, driving off with no destination in mind, hands trembling on the wheel. I ended up in a parking lot of a closed grocery store, just sitting there for who knows how long. My phone kept buzzing with calls and texts from Lauren, 20 missed calls before I powered it off. I screamed in my car until my throat burned. The mix of hurt, rage, humiliation, and heartbreak was like a poison in my veins. I had been married to Lauren for 6 years. We were that couple everyone thought was so solid. And now, this. Eventually, as my emotions calmed just a notch, my thoughts went to Ryan, that backstabbing piece of shit. Not only did he betray my friendship, he did it in the most insulting way possible. In my own home, all the Friday happy hours, all the work projects. We were work buddies, damn it. He'd met my wife at an office holiday party. I remember them chatting by the punch bowl. One thought nothing of it at the time. In hindsight, the puzzle pieces started falling into place. The weekend overtime Lauren claimed she had, which coincided with when Ryan was suddenly busy too. The one time I saw a text notification pop up on her phone from R, and she dismissed it as a coworker asking about a project. God, I felt like an idiot. I was torn about what to do next. Part of me wanted to blow up both their lives immediately. Call up Ryan's fiancée. Yeah, he's engaged, by the way, to a lovely girl I've met several times. Or show up at my workplace and tell everyone what a two-faced snake he was. Or march back home, confront Lauren with every angry thought in my head, and kick her out for good. But an idea hit me as I sat in that empty parking lot, watching the late autumn leaves skitter across the asphalt. Ryan had more to answer for than just screwing my wife. See, at our company, Ryan and I worked in the finance department. I'm a senior analyst, and he's, well, was, an accounting manager. For months, I had the nagging sense something was off in one of our budgets. A significant amount of money was missing from a project Ryan oversaw. When I'd brought it up to him casually a while back, he brushed it off, giving some explanation about vendor payments overlapping quarters, which kind of made sense. I was busy with my own projects and let it slide, figuring I'd misread the numbers. Now, in that moment of clarity, or madness, I recalled those discrepancies. My gut started whispering a sinister theory. What if Ryan was stealing from the company? It seemed crazy. This was a guy the first joked around with daily. But then, this was also a guy who smiled to my face and slept with my wife behind my back. If he was that deceitful in his personal life, who's to say he wouldn't also be shady at work? And the more I thought about it, the more those budget irregularities gnawed at me. My heartbreak found a focus. I would channel all this betrayal and hurt into holding Ryan accountable for everything. I decided not to confront Lauren any further that day. Instead, I drove to a nearby motel, checked in. No way I could sleep under the same roof as her that night, and I dug out my work laptop. Fueled by anger and a 6-pack of vending machine beer, I spent the rest of the day and most of the night combing through financial records. It didn't take long to find it. Dozens of suspicious transactions, all authorized by Ryan. Phony vendor invoices for consulting services that I was pretty sure were bogus. Payments made to accounts with obscure names that I'd never seen involved in our projects. And the kicker, a series of transfers to a particular LLC that stood out because I remembered Ryan joking about wanting to start a side business with a silly name very similar to that LLC. My hands were shaking with a mix of vindication and rage. The son of a bitch was siphoning company money into a shell company, likely his company. By 3 a.m., I had compiled a pretty damning folder of evidence. I knew I had enough to nail him. But I wanted to be absolutely sure this would end him, beyond just getting him fired. I wanted ruin for Ryan. He had ruined my life. Now I was going to return the favor in spades. The next day at work, I played it cool. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. On the inside, I was dying each time I saw an incoming text from Lauren. I'd turned my phone back on in the morning to an onslaught of messages from her begging to talk. I ignored them. I had to compartmentalize, focusing on the takedown. When I caught a glimpse of Ryan in the hallway at the office, my blood boiled. He had the nerve to look worried and guilty, but also tried to act normal. If I hadn't known better, I'd think he was just a coworker having a regular day. The audacity. I spent that day quietly double-checking a few things in our accounting software, pulling audit logs, and making sure I could trace every stolen dollar to Ryan. By the end of the day, I was satisfied. He'd been skimming company funds for well over a year, and the total was in the high 5 figures, creeping into 6. No wonder he could afford fancy hotels and whatever else for his affair. The guy was funding his cheating escapades with company money. Now, I had to set the trap. I considered confronting him directly and threatening to expose him, unless what? There was nothing I wanted from him except his destruction. Maybe in some alternate universe I'd use it to blackmail him into, say, confessing to his fiancée and leaving my wife alone. But I knew that wouldn't fix the core betrayal. And honestly, I had zero interest in negotiating with this asshole. I wanted official consequences, firing, disgrace, maybe even jail. I decided to go to the big guns, our company's corporate security and compliance department, basically the internal fraud investigators. I reached out to one of the officers I'd met a few times and told her I had evidence of a likely embezzlement situation. Things moved fast after that. A meeting was set for the next morning with her and the head of finance. I came in with printouts of the fake invoices and money trail, along with a thumb drive of files. I also, for good measure, mentioned that the person in question had personal issues that might make him a flight risk. Didn't go into detail about the affair, but I hinted he was unstable. The head of finance's face got progressively darker as I laid out the scheme. They thanked me for the thorough work and told me to keep this absolutely secret while they coordinated the next steps. I expected they'd simply fire him, and maybe quietly press charges later. But apparently the evidence was so strong and the amounts so large that corporate decided to get law enforcement involved immediately. Fine by me. 2 days later, karma came for Ryan, and I made sure I was there to see it. It was a Friday, nearly 1 week since I walked in on the worst side of my life. The police, in coordination with corporate security, came to our office. 4 cops in uniforms marched into our department, accompanied by 2 very stern-looking corporate investigators. Word spread fast around the floor that something big was happening. I sat at my desk, heart pounding, knowing exactly what it was, but trying to stay looking confused like everyone else. They went straight to Ryan's office. I couldn't see from my cubicle, so I walked over to the coffee machine, which conveniently had a direct line of sight down the hall. I watched with a grim sort of satisfaction as they escorted a handcuffed Ryan out, his face beet red and eyes darting around at the staring coworkers. He spotted me in the crowd of onlookers. I just sipped my coffee. The moment our eyes met, I gave him the smallest, coldest smile. I've never seen someone look so simultaneously enraged and terrified. He knew I had done this. As he was led past me, he actually burst out, "You bastard, you couldn't just..." But one of the cops jerked him along before he could finish. I didn't respond. I just quietly said, "Enjoy prison," as he was dragged out the main doors. Maybe he heard it, maybe not. Within hours, the news had spread throughout the company that Ryan had been caught embezzling company funds and was arrested on the spot. An email went out from HR about an employee departure due to gross misconduct. I'm sure the rumor mill would soon connect the dots that I was the one who uncovered it, but I didn't care about fame or credit. I sat back down at my desk, shaking with adrenaline. I won't lie, I felt a rush of vindication. The personal betrayal was still there, a raw wound, but seeing Ryan get what he deserved was like a balm to my bleeding heart. That evening, I finally went home to talk to Lauren. I'd ignored her so much that she was beside herself, waiting in the living room the second I opened the door. She knew something was up, because by sheer coincidence, she had heard from Ryan's fiancée, who I made sure learned everything. Yep, I might have sent an anonymous tip her way, including his arrest record, that Ryan was arrested at work. So Lauren's affair partner was not only outed, but in jail. She looked pale and anxious. We had the ugliest, most painful talk of my life. She apologized over and over, bawling her eyes out, saying it was the biggest mistake of her life, That it only happened because she felt I was distant, and Ryan paid attention. Blah blah. Spare me. She claimed it had been going on for about 3 months, and she swore it was only because she was unhappy with herself, that she still loved me, that I was a good husband. All that crap. I told her I knew about the length of the affair, because I had plenty of evidence now, thanks to snooping through her messages in the days after I caught them. Yeah, I went there. I read their disgusting exchanges where they laughed about me being clueless. So she had little room to lie. When I mentioned that I was the one who got Ryan arrested, her jaw dropped. She hadn't put 2 and 2 together. I think she assumed it was a coincidence or someone else caught him. You did that? She asked, eyes wide. I just responded. He had it coming. And not just for the affair. He was stealing, Lauren. From work. From me, basically. She looked completely stunned. Maybe she truly hadn't known that side of him. Good. I hope she feels just as betrayed by him as I feel by her. By the end of that conversation, I was done. I told Lauren I needed space and that she should go stay with her sister or a friend for a while. She begged to stay, to, quote, work things out. I laughed in spite of myself. Work things out? After this? I told her I didn't know about our future, that I was too hurt to even consider it right now. What I did know was that her lover was going to jail for his crimes, and that she needed to rethink her life choices. So that's where things stand. As I write this, I'm alone in what used to be our home, surrounded by the echoes of a life that feels like a lie. Ryan is currently facing a plethora of criminal charges. Fraud, embezzlement, you name it. Word at work is he'll be gone for a long time if convicted. HR told me in confidence that the investigation I provided basically gift-wrapped the case for the authorities. Good. My wife. I don't know what to do about my wife. She's been texting nonstop from her sister's place, saying she'll do anything to fix this. That she's cut contact with Ryan, well, that's easy since he's behind bars and also probably hates her now for not warning him. I haven't responded. I'm just numb. I took some personal leave from work to clear my head. Part of me is gloating. My revenge fantasy came true. I mean, I caught my wife's lover both cheating and stealing, and I took him down spectacularly. He's lost his job, his reputation, and soon his freedom. In a way, I got everything I wanted in terms of revenge, but if I'm being honest, I don't feel the triumph I thought I would. It's a bittersweet satisfaction. I won the battle, sure, but the war that damaged my marriage and my peace of mind is ongoing. I'm not sure what comes next for Lauren and me. Maybe this marriage is unsalvageable. Maybe I'll never forgive her. Right now, I can't even look at her. But at least, when I close my eyes at night, I can take some grim comfort in knowing that Ryan is staring at a cell ceiling, wearing an orange jumpsuit, and thinking about how royally he fucked around and found out. Update 1, 2 weeks later. It's been 2 weeks since my life imploded, and I figured I owe an update. Honestly, it feels like 2 years. So much has happened, and yet I'm still wading through the emotional wreckage. First off, Ryan is out on bail. Money can buy temporary freedom, I guess. I learned through the grapevine at work that his parents posted bail for him a few days after his arrest. The conditions of his release include surrendering his passport and a promise to stay the hell away from our company. Like he'd dare show his face there anyway. He's lawyered up, of course. I have no intention of having any contact with him, but I did hear from a mutual coworker that he's been fired, and that the company is fully cooperating with the DA to make sure he gets nailed to the wall. Good. Every time I think about him, I feel a flare of white-hot anger, but it's less frequent now. I guess knowing that his life is in shambles, job gone, wedding canceled, oh yeah, his fiancée dumped him like a hot potato, which I'll get to in a sec, and a possible prison sentence looming, has given me a small measure of peace. The revenge is effectively done. Now about Lauren, my wife. After I told her to go stay somewhere else, she went to her older sister's house. She's been there ever since. In the first few days after the confrontation, she texted and called incessantly, despite my request for space. Her messages ran the gamut from lengthy apologies and, I love you please, we can fix this please, to updates on how she's scheduling individual therapy for herself, to abject self-loathing statements like, I don't deserve you, but I want to be better for you. It was exhausting and heartbreaking to read. For the most part, I didn't respond. I just couldn't. I needed silence to process everything. I did agree to meet her once, about a week ago, in a neutral location, a park during the day, to talk things through calmly. She brought homemade sandwiches, as if a picnic could patch up the gaping wound between us. We sat on a bench, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Honestly, neither had I. What followed was a tough conversation. She owned up fully to the affair, no more minimizing or blaming stress or whatever. She said it was all her fault, that she was selfish, that she enjoyed the attention and excitement and thought I'd never find out. She confessed she'd been tempted to come clean earlier but was too cowardly and hoped to just end the fling and pretend it never happened. She claims she was on the verge of cutting it off with Ryan right before I caught them. I don't know if that's true or just something she's saying to salvage a scrap of sympathy. It doesn't really matter. The damage is done. I mostly listened quietly. I didn't have much to say that I haven't already said. I did tell her that reading the messages between her and Ryan, yes, I admitted I read them, devastated me, and that it wasn't just the sex. It was the lies and making me the clueless fool. She cried, a lot. She's been crying basically every time I see or talk to her. At some point, I realized I'd run out of tears myself. Now I mostly feel numb or randomly angry. She asked if I'd consider couples therapy, or some kind of trial separation, instead of jumping straight to divorce. She practically begged. It's weird. Part of me still loves her, or at least loves the person I thought she was, and seeing her in such anguish almost pulled at my heartstrings. Almost. But then I remember the image of her in our bed with someone else, and any softness I feel gets iced over real quick. I told her I was open to therapy, but I made no promises about reconciliation. In truth, I've already met with a divorce attorney to understand my options. I haven't filed anything yet. I'm feeling no rush on that decision. There's a lot to sort out if we go that route. Finances, the house, etc. And I want my head to be clearer. One grimly satisfying thing did happen during that meetup in the park. I learned that Lauren actually did get a taste of betrayal herself. Remember I hinted that maybe she hadn't known about Ryan's scummy side? Well, it turns out Ryan had been lying to her too. He told her that he and his fiancée were in an open relationship. Complete bullshit. His now ex-fiancée, Carrie, certainly didn't think so. Lauren found out the truth when Carrie reached out to her after everything blew up. Apparently, Carrie discovered some old messages from Lauren on Ryan's blocked list. Guess he'd block Lauren after I caught them, likely to save his own skin. Carrie and Lauren ended up talking. Lauren told me through tears that Carrie rightfully chewed her out over the affair and then dropped a bomb. Ryan had cheated before with at least 2 other women during his engagement. One of them was even a married coworker from another department. So Lauren was just one in a string, not some special affair partner. She was utterly mortified and crushed. As messed up as it sounds, hearing this gave me a twisted kind of relief. It's like karma came for her too. She got to feel a fraction of the betrayal I felt. She said to me, "I was such an idiot, he never cared about me at all." I didn't have much sympathy to offer. I think she realized expecting comfort from me was a long shot, and that was another round of crying. Now, about Ryan's fiancée, Carrie, I haven't spoken to her directly, but through mutual connections and a one-way information pipeline via Lauren, oddly enough, I know that she dumped Ryan immediately and has since moved out of the apartment they shared. She's also cooperating with the legal case. Apparently, she handed over some personal financial records of Ryan's that might help prove he was stashing the stolen money. I guess scorned partners think alike. I'm glad she's holding nothing back. I did send her a short message through a mutual friend, basically saying I'm so sorry for what you went through. I had no idea this was happening. If you need any info from me, I'm here. She replied kindly that she appreciated it, and maybe down the line we could compare notes, but right now she's not up to it. Totally understandable. As for me, I've been a mess, not gonna lie. I took a 2-week leave from work. My boss has been understanding. He knows I was the whistleblower on the embezzlement, but he's blissfully unaware of the personal drama entangled with it. I prefer to keep those details out of professional life. I'm staying with my brother for now. I just couldn't bear to sleep in the house I shared with Lauren, not with all those memories in every corner. My brother and his wife have been incredibly supportive. They set up their guest room for me, no questions asked, though I eventually told them the broad strokes. I've started seeing a therapist on my own, mainly to deal with the betrayal anger. It's helping, I guess. I've never been the therapy type, but man, when your entire world falls apart, you'll try anything to not feel so horribly lost. One thing that surprised me is how some friends and family responded when they learned of the situation. A few were 100% in my corner, urging me to ditch Lauren and never look back. A couple others, while condemning what she did, gently reminded me that only I can decide if this marriage is worth saving, and that people do recover from affairs. I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. Forgiveness feels like an impossibility at the moment. But I also haven't outright decided to end it. I'm in limbo, I guess. Lauren, for her part, continues to try. She writes me an email every single day-long letters about how she's feeling, what she's learning in therapy. Yes, she started individual therapy immediately. And vows of how she would do anything to make it right. I mostly don't reply, though I do read them, masochist that I am. She's also apparently quit her job. Ryan worked in the same company, different department, but still the same company, and she says she couldn't stand staying there with all that's happened. I have mixed feelings about that. I didn't ask her to do it, but it shows she's trying to change something in her life. Or she's just running away from the embarrassment, which I can't really blame her for. I know a lot of people reading this will probably shout, "Just divorce her and move on." And you're probably right, logically. Trust me, a big part of me wants to do just that and never see her again. Another part of me remembers 6 years of love and partnership and is utterly heartbroken at the idea of it all ending like this. I haven't made that choice yet. Not fully. What I do know is that I have zero interest in rushing anything. We're effectively separated right now, and will continue to be for the foreseeable future. I told Lauren not to expect any decisions from me until after the new year at least. That gives me a couple of months. She said she understood and would wait as long as it takes, and that this is entirely my call now. Damn right it is. To wrap up, here's where things stand practically. Ryan is facing the music legally. Next step is an arraignment in a few weeks. The evidence against him is rock solid, so I'm not worried about him wriggling away. He's single now. No fiancé, no side chicks, nothing. And from what I hear, he's basically radioactive in our industry too. Good luck finding a new job with fraud charges hanging over you, buddy. Lauren and I are separated. I'm focusing on my own healing, and she's working on whatever issues led her to betray me. Whether we eventually try to reconcile or end it for good is undecided. And frankly, I swing between those options daily. I'm leaning on my support network. Never thought I'd be a 34-year-old man crashing at his brother's place, but here we are. Taking it one day at a time, thanks to everyone who offered advice and support after my first post. Reading the comments helped me see just how not alone I am in feeling all these wild emotions. I'll update again down the line once I have more clarity on the marriage situation or if anything noteworthy happens. I have a feeling the actual trial, when it comes, might be a circus. Right now, I'm just trying to get through each day. Revenge might be sweet, but it doesn't mend a broken heart. Update 2, 6 months later. Hey everyone. It's been about half a year since my last update. I wish I could say everything's all sunshine and rainbows now, but this isn't that kind of story. Still, a lot has happened, and I've reached the end of a chapter, for better or worse. First, the legal aftermath. Ryan had his day in court, or rather, days in court. The case actually moved relatively quickly. He ended up taking a plea deal. Initially, he tried to fight it. His lawyer even floated some nonsense about how I had a personal vendetta against him. Which, okay, fair, I did, but that didn't change the hard evidence of his crimes. There was a surreal moment during the pretrial phase where I had to give a deposition and later testimony about how I uncovered the embezzlement. As expected, his attorney tried to bring up the affair as if it were relevant. "Did you have any non-professional motivation for examining Mr.'s accounts?" he asked. I responded, "My motivation was to protect the company from a thief." End of story. The judge shut down the digging into personal matters pretty quickly, stating it had no bearing on the fraud case. Thank God. I didn't particularly want to air my dirty laundry, or Lauren's, in a courtroom full of strangers. Facing overwhelming evidence, Ryan finally caved. He pled guilty to several counts of fraud and embezzlement. Last week was his sentencing. I showed up in person, not out of any sense of obligation, but because I needed to see it through to the end. He got 5 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 3. He also was ordered to pay restitution, which I doubt he'll ever fully pay back. He's essentially bankrupt, and whatever money he stole is long gone. Lavish trips, fancy dinners, and who knows what else. He actually had the gall to make a brief statement, turning to face the small audience, which included me, a few ex-coworkers, and his ex-fiancée, to mumble an apology. "I'm sorry for all the people I hurt," he said, looking right at me. I just stared back, expressionless. I feel like I should have felt something in that moment. Maybe pity, or triumph, or anger. But I was surprisingly hollow. Just like the day he was let out of our office in cuffs, I thought, "You did this to yourself." And that was that. They took him away. And I caught one last glimpse of him in his orange jumpsuit before the doors closed. So Ryan's where he belongs. Justice served, I suppose. It didn't make me happy, not in any real sense. But it did bring a sense of closure. A particularly ugly chapter of this ordeal is over. Now the harder part, for me, my marriage. I ultimately made the painful decision to end it. I filed for divorce about 3 months ago. Yesterday, it became official. The papers are signed, the ink is dry, and Lauren and I are no longer husband and wife. Making that choice was excruciating, even after everything she did. I gave myself those months of separation and therapy to see if there was anything left worth salvaging. We did attend a few marriage counseling sessions early on, at her urging, but each time I found myself emotionally checked out. I realized I couldn't be genuine in therapy when, deep down, I had this kernel of resentment I just couldn't shake. I would sit there as the counselor asked probing questions and watch Lauren cry as she acknowledged all her faults, and I'd feel nothing. Or worse, I'd feel annoyed, like her tears were inconveniencing me. That's when I knew I was pretty much done. I think she sensed it too. To her credit, Lauren accepted my decision with grace, or as much grace as one can muster in such a situation. When I told her I wanted a divorce, She broke down, of course. But she didn't argue or beg at that point. She said through tears, "I understand. I hurt you too much. I'll sign whatever you need me to." It was a quietly devastating moment for both of us. In some twisted way, her calm acceptance made it hurt more. Like I almost wanted her to fight it so I could have an excuse to lash out. But she didn't. She just looked defeated and hollow. The divorce process was relatively smooth, practically speaking. We have no kids, thank God, and we agreed to split things without much battle. She didn't try to screw me over financially or anything, quite the opposite. She insisted I keep the house. Maybe as a final atonement, she didn't want to profit from the marriage she blew up. In the end, I decided to sell the house anyway. Too many memories in those walls. I'm typing this from a new apartment I rented downtown. A fresh start in a space with no ghosts. We did have one final face-to-face when we met to sign the papers with the notary. It was quick, efficient. Afterward, we walked out to the parking lot together, a weird moment where we both hesitated, not knowing how to say goodbye after nearly 7 years together. 6 married, plus the dating. She finally said, "I really am sorry, for everything." I nodded and managed a terse, "I know, take care of yourself." She looked like she wanted to hug me, but I subtly backed up, and she seemed to think better of it. We parted ways with a whimper, not a bang.